I'm Mr. Abbott, and today I'm going to be talking about adding detail to your narrative. We're going to be looking at specifically detailed words versus boring language and sensory language. Let's move on here. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to rewrite the sentence below so that it's more descriptive. The man walked into the room. Try on a piece of paper, how detailed can you make that sentence without really changing too much about it? You can change one word out for another, but try not to change around the sentence too much. Add a couple words. What can you do? Take a minute, pause this video, and see if you can rewrite this sentence to incorporate more detail. All right, if you paused your video, welcome back. So ask yourself, what kind of change did you make to make this sentence more descriptive? Let's take a look at some of the changes that you possibly have made. Maybe you made some or all of these. First, did you change the nouns of the sentence to be more descriptive? So the man could have been changed to the gentleman, or the pitcher, or the gardener. The room could have been changed to the ballroom, locker room, or garage. So the gentleman walked into the ballroom, the pitcher walked into the locker room, the gardener walked into the garage. And you'll see that the sentence, the man walked into the room, was very vague. Almost anybody could have envisioned that in any way they wanted. All three of these are accurate changes, and they all describe them walking into the room. And so this is something that you want to consider in your writing. Could your writing be misinterpreted to mean something it doesn't? Now, another change you might have made is, did you add a descriptive verb to the sentence? So did you change the verb walk to be something more descriptive of what was happening? The gentleman strolled into the ballroom. The pitcher stomped into the locker room. The gardener trudged into the garage. Once again, we're getting more detail. There are such things as boring verbs. You don't want to use boring verbs. You want to pick verbs that are full of detail, that describe both denotatively and connotatively what the character is doing with their actions. Another change you might have made is adding adjectives. The gentleman strolled into the lavish ballroom. The furious pitcher stomped into the locker room. The tired gardener trudged into the garage. Perhaps you added adverbs. The gentleman strolled gracefully into the lavish ballroom. The furious pitcher stomped aggressively into the locker room, or the tired gardener trudged slowly into the garage. Once again, you're seeing that these pictures, as I change these words, they're giving a more precise picture of what is happening with these people and where they're going. And of course, the last change you might have made is perhaps you added metaphors or similes, what's known as figurative language. The gentleman strolled gracefully into the lavish ballroom like a peacock. Like a charging bull, the furious pitcher stomped aggressively into the locker room. The tired gardener trudged slowly as a tortoise into the garage. And so once again, you see, we started off with this sentence, the man walked into the room, but you can see we ended up with three wildly different interpretations. And I could have kept going. We could have kept finding different ways that different people are walking into different rooms. And this is the problem with vague language. When you give your reader vague language, they don't really know what to interpret. And so it's left up to them to interpret it, and it might not be what you were initially planning. And so when you're talking about adding details, you're really focusing on five main areas: descriptive nouns, descriptive verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and figurative language. And what I mean by that is metaphors and similes. These are really where the detail of your writing is going to come through. And if you're doing these, then no doubt your writing has quite a bit of detail to it. Now, one of the main places you're going to want to add detail is in your descriptive verbs. And there are a list of kind of boring verbs here that I have. And so said, laughed, ate, ran, walked, yelled, saw, liked, close, thought, fought, and jump. All are kind of boring verbs. There's not much to them. There's much better verbs to be used. Instead of ran, you could say hurried, raced, scurried, dashed, galloped, trotted, bolted, darted, sprinted, rushed, right? Instead of saying you closed something, you slammed it, you latched it, you plugged it, you stopped it, you sealed it, you barricaded it, fastened it, secured it, blocked it, bolted. We have such variety in English language that there's really no excuse for using the boring verbs. You want to find something that's really going to correctly describe what it is that you're trying to say. And the verb is one of those places that often gets overlooked. And so here we go. Let's practice this a little bit. Think about where you can change nouns to descriptive nouns, verbs to descriptive verbs, add adjectives, add adverbs, add figurative language, and pause the video for a minute and try and revise this sentence so that it has more detail. The puppies played in the park. Pause your video for a minute while you do this. Welcome back to those of you who paused your video. Here we go. Here are two of the revisions that I've come up with. Barely more than balls of fur, the puppies wrestled and rolled in the rough grass of the park. And so here we go. I added a phrase here, barely more than balls of fur. The puppies, I actually kept the same. Wrestled and rolled. I was trying to be specific for how they are playing. I don't want to just say they're playing. There are many ways to play. What does that play look like? And in the park, the rough grass of the park, right? So I added another noun to describe the park and an adjective to that noun. Another way you could have done this, or I did it, was an adorable stampede. The wrinkly puppies raced through the dandelions. And so here I add an adorable stampede as a phrase at the beginning. I add wrinkly to the puppies, and they're playing. I said they were racing. Now they're no longer wrestling and rolling. They're racing. They're running through the dandelions. And you notice I didn't really say park. It's inferred that they're in kind of a park or a grassy area if they're running through an area with dandelions. In revision 2, we have the sentence, the boy kicked the ball over the fence. Once again, take a minute, pause the video, try to add more detail to this sentence. Welcome back to those of you who paused your video. Now here we go. Here are some of the edits that I made. With a malicious grin, the angry bully grabbed the football and kicked it over the school fence. Now I turned the boy into an angry bully, and I added grabbed the football and kicked it over the fence. I probably should have said punted it over the fence. Punted it would have been a better verb than kicked, right? Because that's what you do with footballs. And the fence, I added an adjective and said the school fence. This helps establish the setting. And so here I'm changing this kind of general scenario of a boy kicking a ball over the fence to a bully being mean and taking a ball away from somebody. Here's another example. The spindly boy kicked awkwardly and the ball wobbled wildly through the air over the neighbor's fence. So here we go. I'm adding the adjective spindly to the boy and saying he kicked awkwardly, adding an adverb. The ball wobbled wildly through the air over in the neighbor's fence. And so it's giving a little bit more idea of the setting and a little bit more description of what the ball is doing in the air. Let's do one more. The cat sat on the sofa. Take a minute, pause this video, and try to write a version of this with more detail. Welcome back to those of you who paused your video. Here we go. Here are some of the examples that I made for you. The languid cat lounged on the plush love seat. So here we have a cat becoming the languid cat, which means kind of lazy. It's lounging, it's not just sitting, and it's sitting on a plush love seat instead of a sofa. And I really like this because it adds that alliteration and assonance of the L sound. Languid, lounge, plush, love seat. Just kind of playing around with sound there a little bit. And so this is the image of a cat being kind of lazy and sitting around on a sofa. My other sentence, I said, the cagey alley cat perched itself carefully on top of the ruined couch. So this is a completely different vision of this. This is like an abandoned couch out in an alley that some like beat up alley cat is sitting on top of. A completely different vision than the first sentence, but they are all both correctly described by the cat sat on the sofa. And this is the problem with vague language. And you'll see this if you take a look at the sensory detail as well. And so, sensory language, if you want to paint a picture in somebody's head, you have to think about how we do that. All humans use five senses in order to interpret their world: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. And so, if you want to paint a new world inside somebody's head, you need to give them words that help to paint those senses as well. And so, for sight, the muddy socks were piled on top of the rug. So we have muddiness, socks, piled places. Sound, the buzzing sound filled the air. Buzzing is the sound that people can identify with. Touch, the mud felt slimy and cold between my toes. We have slimy and cold. Taste, the pizza tasted like cardboard. Not good pizza. And smell, her perfume smelled sweet like flowers and vanilla. You have flowers and vanilla there. And so these, if you evoke the senses in your writing, you're going to allow your audience to get a much clearer picture of what it is that you're trying to say. Now, I would ask, if we were to look at this picture, what would you feel with your five senses? Take a minute here, pause the video if you need to, and ask yourself and put yourself in this picture. And what would you be feeling if you were here right now? Perhaps you would feel dry, warm air, grainy, hot sand, camels walking and grunting, a man humming, the sun setting, silhouettes, wispy cirrus clouds, rippling sand dunes, spices. Perhaps you smell spices in the camel's packs. And so we want to think about this when we're writing, because you want your audience to be able to picture what it is you're writing, right? And so if I were to give you the sentence, the woman walked off into the distance, could you tell which picture I was describing between 1, 2, or 3? You probably couldn't, because they all describe the same thing. And this is what I was talking about earlier. How are you going to paint a picture in somebody's head if what you're saying could apply to many different things? Your reader will picture something. It's just whether or not it's the thing that you want them to picture, right? And so, what if I were to do this instead? The fierce old woman marched on through the warm spring air, barely noticing the roar of the busy street. Now, which picture am I describing? Hopefully, you would notice that this applies most to picture 3. And so, by giving more descriptive language, I could assume, even if I didn't show you that picture, that you would have an idea of what it was I was wanting you to think.
Hello, let's take a look at your practice lesson 5 on using sensory detail and description. So the goal of this is I want you to, practice using your senses in writing, allow the reader of your narrative to experience the world through their senses. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be ending up choosing 2 pictures. I would choose something that's really interesting to look at with a lot of things to describe. And each of those pictures, you're going to want to describe it using all 5 senses. And so, if you choose a picture without the sense of taste and you're like, what could I possibly taste in this picture? It might not be a good idea to choose that one, because you want to be able to get all 5 senses in here. And so let me show you what I'm talking about. If we scroll down here a little bit, you can see here I have this image pasted, right? And so now my goal is to describe this image in as much sensory language as possible. Describe the sights, sounds, tastes, touches, smells of the picture. Now you'll notice when I go to describe it here that there's stuff like a waiter and a busy restaurant that aren't in the picture, but you can use your imagination and add it. Really, the picture is just the inspiration for your writing. But you're going to want to write it down. And then once you finish writing about a paragraph of descriptive detail, go back and highlight where are your sight details, where are your sound details, where are your touch, taste, and smell details. And if you want a little bit of help, I put these words on the side here, words that describe sight, words that describe sound, touch, taste, smell. Now, here's what you don't want to do with this, and I see this with some beginning writers sometimes, is they write something like this, where they write they get their picture, and then they say, someone might taste candy and ice cream. They might think flavors were good and the smell was good. I guess that they would see colors of the candies. As for sounds, they would probably hear noises in the restaurant, right? So there's a couple things that are going on here that I don't like. First off, this isn't written in narrative form. This is just telling what somebody might experience. So tell it as a story, not as just, hey, this is what I see in the picture, right? The other thing is, when students say flavors were good, okay, well, what is good? What does good look like to you? What does it mean when something tastes good? Is that because it tastes sweet? Does it taste good because it tastes salty? What is it about the taste that is good? Be specific. The smell was good. Well, what does that mean? What smells good? Um, you also say things like, I guess they would see colors of the candies. Well, what color are these candies, right? Your reader can't see. You're pretending that your reader can't actually see this picture up here, right? So you're trying to describe it to a reader who couldn't see it. And would they be able to pick your picture out, right? If they had a bunch of pictures in front of them, would they be able to say, oh, that's the one? That's the one that this was drawn from. And so paint a picture with words. Be detailed and specific. Don't tell me something tastes good. Just tell me what it tastes like. And write as though you were writing a story. And so if you go down here, here's the spot where you'll actually be writing your stories and pasting your images. So paste an image here, write the story here, and highlight. Here's some words to help you if you need it. And then number two, paste an image here, a different image, write the story here, and then highlight your sensory words. And once again, there are words to help you. If you have questions about this assignment, make sure you bring those with you to class and ask me, get clarification. Otherwise, enjoy your writing and good luck.